Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the Hearts of Healthcare Professionals, where we rebalance and renew your resilience. Today, I have a lovely speaker, Kelly Levatino. Is that correct? Did I say that right?
You got it.
I need to butcher it right from the beginning.
That's fine.
Yes. Well, Kelly is she is a Christian communicator. She's a speaker. She teaches Bible. And has a blog, and she has a wonderful purpose, and that is to motivate women to passionately seek after Jesus. So
Yes.
that's a beautiful message. And welcome, Kelly.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Now, some people may be thinking, well, what is she doing on a healthcare summit? So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and then your connection to the healthcare world?
Sure, absolutely. So I have been married to my husband for 15 years. We have two daughters, ages 13 and 11. So we're busy with them. And then, as you mentioned, I'm a Christian communicator. So I have an undergrad in biblical studies and theology. I have a master's in Christian ministry. So in addition to doing the wife and mom thing and a part-time job, I really love to just teach the Bible. Do that at our church in a number of different ways. And then I also do that traveling and speaking at events. And my heart, like you said, is to motivate people to move closer to Jesus. And it's for their good and it's for his glory at the same time. So it's win-win.
Absolutely.
And what my connection is to the healthcare world is I am privileged to have a sister-in-law who is a nurse at St. Jude. So just walking with her through life and hearing her stories and seeing her have to balance life. I got that front row seat with her. And then I also have my best friend from high school who has been an ER nurse for over 10 years now. And same thing, just walking through life with her, watching her balance 3 little children and night shift and weekend shift and, a husband thrown in there. And so I've really been able to learn a lot about the stresses of everyday life for healthcare workers.
Absolutely. Yes. You just need to know one, and then you understand the world for sure. Yeah.
That's right.
Well, why is it important to prioritize your spiritual health during times of high stress?
That is a great question. The Bible is really clear, and modern psychology agrees that we humans are really two components. We are our bodies, our physical bodies, and then the immaterial part of us, our souls or our spirits. And both need to be cared for. So just like our physical bodies need to be nourished, exercised, need rest, our souls need to be nourished and they need rest as well. Unfortunately, they are easier to neglect because we can't see them. We don't look in the mirror and say, oh, my soul's looking a little ratty today, we can't see it. So it's easier to neglect, but it's definitely what we need to focus on, maybe even primarily in order to keep ourselves to avoiding burnout. Just watching my sister-in-law and my best friend, like I said, that both have gotten married, both have had children, they've both worked night shift, they both work full time, and just trying to balance all of that. A lot of times it feels like they put themselves, like a lot of healthcare workers, on the back burner.
Yeah, something has to give, and they're the ones who do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like you can't balance it all. And so what can we sacrifice? Well, our physical health or our spiritual health. And those things slide to the bottom of the priority list. But just like when you're on the airplane and they're telling you that if the oxygen levels change and the masks drop, you have to put yours on first before you can help somebody else. And that might sound selfish in the beginning, but when you think of it like that, you realize, like, if you are empty spiritually and just running on fumes, you don't have anything to give to those around you. And that just makes you feel worse, and the cycle continues.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And it's such a simple concept, but boy, we fight it, don't we?
We sure do.
Yeah. All humans, yeah. So what are some ways busy healthcare workers can take care of themselves spiritually?
Sure. Well, we can learn a lot from the Apostle Paul. So he wrote a lot of the New Testament, and he was essentially the first missionary outside of Jerusalem to really take the Christian message to other countries and other people groups. And he said something in his 2 Corinthians letter that you may have heard before, but he starts talking about this condition that he has. He calls it a thorn in his flesh.
Yeah.
He doesn't get into any other details about what it is, and everybody's speculated over the years, but most agree it's probably a physical ailment. And he says that it's very tormentuous. It's not just an inconvenient condition. It's a real hindrance. It's a real bothersome. It's very painful to him.
Mm-hmm.
And he talks about how he has asked the Lord 3 times, pleaded with the Lord, is how the scriptures read.
Mm-hmm.
Take it away. And Paul reports to us that what the Lord said in return is, my grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in your weakness.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we want to hear.
Yeah.
A really hard thing, like a pandemic maybe. But it's an interesting response. And so what does God mean? I've actually written a blog post on this subject, and it's by far the most searched for on Google.
Wow.
Word phrase is, what does that mean? My grace is sufficient for you. By far the most searched. Well,
people are seeking.
Yes. It's kind of an odd phrase, and it's ambiguous, but when we really stop and think about it, it becomes a little clearer. So God is saying, my grace is sufficient for you, to Paul. So God is saying, my grace will sustain you through this thorn, through this torment, through this pain. I'm not going to take it away. You're still going to go through it, but I will myself, God, will sustain you. So that's the first thing he's saying. But then he's also saying, you don't have to be perfectly strong. My power is shown most when I work through weakness.
Yeah.
And I work through people that don't have all the answers. When I work through people who try their best in the healthcare field, do all the right things, and the patient still dies.
Right.
All the right things, but the patient still has a terminal illness. Or maybe even miss a diagnosis here and there. Imagine that. You guys are not God.
Right.
People expect you to be God. And sometimes maybe even yourselves expect yourselves to be able to fix everything and do everything on point. But God is saying the opposite. Yeah. He is saying to Paul and to us by extension, your weakness is where I get shown off to people.
Yeah.
So everyone around Paul in this community would know about his condition. They would know that he suffers so much with this pain. And then when Paul, accomplishes great things in his life, they sit back and they're like, there's no way Paul could have done that.
Yeah.
No way.
Oh, I love how you explain that Bible story. That is so clear now.
Yeah, and it's the same for us too. His power is made clear in our weaknesses. And our weaknesses might not be physical. They might.
Mm-hmm.
They could be emotional. You could be dealing with anxiety or depression, especially during this crazy pandemic time. Or they might be a physical ailment that holds you back.
Right.
But we press into those weaknesses, and we don't have to, we release ourselves of having to be perfect.
Yeah.
All right. And having to be enough.
Right.
Realize that the Lord shows off through that, and he is praised.
And it's interesting. I never really thought about this either until you're citing the story. Once God tells Paul that, he's done with it, and he moves. You don't hear him talk about it anymore. And for something to, really affect him to the degree that it does, he doesn't keep talking about it. And so often, I think we like to sit in our misery. Like, let me tell you what's going on. And the next person, let me tell you what's going on. And we just keeping it stirred up. But Paul doesn't do that. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
I accept that.
You're absolutely. He doesn't work on it.
Yeah.
He doesn't use it as an excuse or anything else. He just trusts.
Yeah. So Kelly, one of the things that I can attest to personally, having worked a crazy night shift and 2 young children a year apart or 15 months apart, and husband and everything else you're trying to juggle. You think I've learned to juggle in my life with some plates, maybe with all this, but as odd as it may seem, when you're in that moment, I may know to do things like pray, to journal, to be gratitude, that type of thing. But when you're in the throes of it, that just leaves you.
Absolutely.
You just can't, or you don't even know where to start. It just seems like, oh my gosh, just one more thing. It's too overwhelming. Can you
Sure.
encourage us and talk to us a little bit about how we can maybe take little baby steps and
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, there's so many competing voices out there on top 10 things to do to have a wonderful life type of articles, and you don't even have the time or the mental energy to read the article, much less employ all of the 10 things that they're going to list for you. There's a lot of look inside yourself, find your inner strength, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and it's all on you. That's the message that we get. And I think even maybe for healthcare workers who have excelled in school, for people that excel in school, a lot of it is, I got to make myself. I'm making myself. I make my own life. I'm in charge of my destiny, blah, blah, blah. And we put all the onus on us. Well, the scriptures don't do that. Praise the Lord.
Yeah.
Jesus, in the gospel to Matthew, he was speaking, and he says, "Come to me, all you who are weary, and I will give you rest. My yoke is easy and my burden is light." So we don't have to be perfect. We don't have to make everyone happy. We don't have to be enough. We don't have to be all things to all people. And we can't.
Yeah.
That's the point. We can't. Even if we look inside our souls, even if we look for inner peace or meditate or whatever, at the end of the day, we can't do it. Jesus doesn't say, go to yourself and look for your inner peace. He says, come to me and I will give you rest. So it's that coming to Jesus that is important. And that other piece where he says, my yoke is easy and my burden is light.
Mhm.
A yoke was a tool. I don't know if they still use it in agriculture, but back then it was a harness that went over the neck of an animal.
Right.
It was a harness. And so the older, stronger animal would be harnessed to a younger animal who didn't know the ways of what he was supposed to be doing. And so the older animal, being stronger, bore more weight of the harness than the younger animal. And that afforded him the opportunity to pull that animal in any direction he wanted to.
Right.
That younger animal was trained on where he was supposed to go and what he was supposed to do. So when he cooperated with that older, bigger, stronger animal, life went better for that younger animal.
Right.
And he was trained. So Jesus is using this metaphor, which is totally lost on us Westerners, right? But he's using this metaphor saying, look, come to me, my yoke. Jesus is the strong animal.
Right.
My yoke is easy. I will make your burden light. Come and attach yourself to me. And let me show you how to live your lives.
Yeah.
And show you the way to go. And when you do that, I will give you rest.
And that's exactly what they need at this point.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's where your peace and your joy is going to come from. Attaching yourself to Jesus and letting him show you the way.
Mm-hmm.
So, some ways to do that. Back to the question.
Good.
First and foremost, people might refer to this as a quiet time, 10, 15 minutes a day, where you allow Jesus to take care of your soul. We talk a lot about self-care, and take a bath, take a nap, read a book, do a hobby, something for yourself that makes you feel good. That's great for a time, but you can't really deeply minister to your own soul. You need Jesus to do that. And so we need that daily. We need that daily, just like we need food daily.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically, to block off on the calendar, literally put it on your calendar, 10 to 15 minutes, maybe even the night before, if your shifts change and you've got, your schedules aren't the same every day, think through it the night before. Okay, where's my 10 to 15 minutes that I'm going to have?
Right.
Where I just sit and read the scriptures and be with Jesus. We have to block that off, and we have to guard it as important, because somebody's going to call and say, hey, will you take my shift? Somebody's going to call and say, hey, let's go get coffee. Somebody's going to call and need something or want something out of you. But if you guard that time and say, look, that time's already spoken for,
Mm-hmm.
I can do it with you later.
Yeah.
Then you're going to be investing in your soul that way. And so you'll go and you'll read. If you've not read the Bible much, that's okay. It's just start. Just start. There's a lot of apps out there. If you'd rather have an electronic version that's easily accessible, so you can go for that. There's a great one called YouVersion. And then put a reading plan together, because if you know what you're supposed to read that day, it's a lot easier to stay in rhythm than if each time you open the Bible, you're like, what am I going to read?
How many pages here? Where do I start?
Right. There's only like 2,000 pages. What do I do? If you have a plan, you'll stay in sync a little better. And then these apps have all kinds of plans for you already set up, so you don't even have to map it out for yourself. You just click join the plan, and it tells you what to read each day. And as you read, this is the important part. You're going to be learning truth. You're going to be reminded of who you are. You're going to be reminded of who God is. And you're going to be reminded of how he wants you to live. Yeah. And the reason that we have to saturate in that every single day is because we forget those things every single day.
Right. Because life is happening all around us, and it's fighting for our attention. And
absolutely. We just go on with our lives, and whatever we hear, I mean, even if you think about coronavirus, who knows what's true? Yeah. I mean, you've heard the opposite from everywhere, on every news outlet and every scientific study. Like, who even knows? Well, I know it's true. The scriptures are true. Those are not going to change. Right. Let's go back there and center ourselves on, okay, who is God really? He's sovereign. He's good. He's in control. He's all powerful. He's everywhere. And just go through his attributes. Well, you're not going to know his attributes if you don't read his scriptures. Right. So if you've never read, I recommend a psalm a day. Psalms are great. I recommend the Gospel of Mark is a great gospel to start with. It's short and concise and to the point. And so just learn about Jesus's life. I also recommend Paul's letters, especially maybe starting with Philippians. Paul is very practical. He gives you why you need to obey the scriptures and what to do. Yes. So he gives you the why and the what right there, and most of his letters are pretty short.
You can learn a lot of his personality through the way he writes.
Oh man, he's great. Yeah. If you want some sarcasm in the Bible, Paul is your man. There's some good stuff in there. Yeah. So there's that. So when you take your 10 to 15 minutes, just read a chapter, just one, and something will occur to you. You might think, ooh, I don't like this. You might think, I have no idea what they're talking about. You might think, I love this. Whatever you're thinking, tell it to God. Talk to God. That's what prayer is, just talking to God. Yeah. And so when you tell him about these things, that is creating a relationship between you and him. And that relationship will follow you through the day. He will bring those scriptures back to your mind. He will encourage you with those truths that you've been putting in your mind and in your soul. And he will bring them up at the right times to remind you and to keep you spiritually healthy. But we've got to prioritize that time. Yeah. So that's my number one thing. And if we can do anything, it's that. It's that. The second thing is a little bit harder. I know from my friends and my family's experience as healthcare workers, worshiping with other people, getting to church consistently is really difficult for healthcare workers. Your schedules are crazy. They're never consistent. If you work nights, then you're too tired to go. If you're going to work days, maybe you're working on the weekends and you can't go. So there's all kinds of valid reasons you can't get to a church regularly. Right. So to offer some practical suggestions, maybe Sunday morning isn't ever going to work for your schedule. That's okay. There are churches out there that offer Saturday night service. There are churches that offer Sunday night services. See if one of those would work for your schedule. Here in the Memphis area, we have a large church that even offers a Thursday evening.
That's a newer trend. I see Thursday evening as well as the traditional Wednesday night prayer service. Right.
So just Google it. Just Google your local churches and click on a few. See if you can't find one that will have a service that is offered at a time that you can consistently commit to being there. And if that's a Bible-believing church, a Bible-preaching church, go for it. Engage with that, because that too is essentially ministering to your spirit.
Yes.
If it just so happens that maybe you're in a smaller town and you can't find that sort of thing, it might come down to you needing to change your work schedule, if that's what it takes to get consistently to church. And I know, that's feels impossible a lot of times, but just have that conversation with your supervisor. Just say, what could we might work out?
Yeah.
Because I really need this for my spiritual care, to be able to go consistently at this time during the week to my church. What could we do? And you just might be surprised at what they can do. But if it comes,
pray about it, because God can clear paths that you could never do on your own.
Absolutely. Especially if you feel like, oh, my supervisor couldn't care less if I wanted to go to church. Just pray about it first. Pray that God would open their hearts and soften their hearts and help them be inclined to help you make that happen, make that a reality. Because at the end of the day, your soul care, your spiritual health is that important.
Yes.
It's important to have that conversation. So again, we've got to fiercely guard that time that we get together with other believers, put it on the calendar, and that time is spoken for, no matter what else comes up, and just really guard that.
And we do that all the time. We have a doctor's appointment. Well, we can't go somewhere else because we have this appointment. And so it's just a matter of making yourself and your time with God a priority.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, something I just want to communicate too, because of the situations that I've been in, and it was 2 brothers who passed away with cancer, and then my parents' end of life care, and they were a distance from me, and so it was a lot of travel back and forth on my part. And for many years, this sounds sad to say, as a prayerful person and a Christian, the only prayer I could muster up was, "Don't let go. Don't let go." And God knew the depth of that in my heart.
Mm-hmm.
He never did. And so the prayer doesn't have to be this big, beautiful dissertation. It's just, don't let go. Because that may be all that you need.
Yeah, it's just conversation. And I think part of your story there is grace. Like, there are going to be seasons of our lives where finding 15 minutes to be alone with Jesus isn't going to work. There are going to be seasons where getting to church isn't going to work. And we're going to have to maybe do something different, maybe listen to a sermon podcast or whatever. But we can't give up those being the goals.
Yes.
So at the same time that we're trying to establish these rhythms and keep them, we're not being legalistic about it. If you miss a daily devotional time, or if you miss a service, you're not going to hell. That's not what sends people to hell, contrary to some things that others have said out there. You're not getting a bad check mark from God on your report card. That's not God. That's not biblical. But those things are important to strive for. So I think it's a great thing to balance and just know that He is a God of grace. And we can be gracious to ourselves, that when we can't always get it done, that's okay. Yeah. We'll just try again tomorrow.
I love that. That's perfect. Yes. Oh, this has been so good. And Kelly, thank you. I mean, you really just brought the scripture to life, and that we're putting this pressure on ourselves. God is there for us, and He wants to take that burden, and that's a huge takeaway right there. And
absolutely,
and so it's a great opportunity to also think outside the box. It's a couple of my friends from church. We have a Zoom meeting periodically, and just let's hang out together and support each other. And group text can be just a little simple one-liner. I know you're going through this. This is a tough week. I'm thinking about you. Boy, that sure lifts you up, and that's your Christian community. So,
and man, if you could find one other Christian in the healthcare industry, that partnership, that friendship, because you're gonna experience things that others aren't gonna experience, and we'll still support you and love you and pray for you, but we won't exactly be able to relate. But if you could find one other Christian at your job, in the healthcare industry, that would be an awesome encouragement.
Yes. Oh, this has been so wonderful. Kelly, thank you for your time and for sharing this with us. I know our audience is going to want to know more about your work and how they can find you. Can you talk a little bit about that? And then I think you have a free gift for everyone as well.
I sure do. Yeah. It's just, I have got a website. It's just my name, Kelly, Kelly, Levatino, which is actually spelled exactly how it sounds. Levatino.com. So you can go to my website. I've got a demo video of what I do when I speak. I've got a long bio. I've got a short bio. I've got some testimonials. I've got my blog articles that I've written since 2008. I'm just speaking to spiritual life. So I've got all that goodness, but just for you guys, as a thank you for being here and being a part of the Healthcare Summit here and just engaging with us, I have a special giveaway just for you. It's a little e-booklet that you can download if you join my email list. I will not spam you. I literally send out maybe 4 a year. And if you join the email list, you can download the e-booklet right then and there. It's called How to Be Helped, and is a reflection on one of the Psalms, and it's just real short 3-page read.
Oh, nice. That's something they can read frequently to get them through sometimes.
Sure, absolutely.
Oh, thank you for your generosity.
Yes.
Well, thank you all again for showing up and being here, and just continue to come back each day for another great message. And Kelly, again, thank you so much.
Thank you.